completed a very useful interview with His Excellency Sheikh Khaled Al Sabah, the Managing Director of International Marketing at Kuwait Petroleum Corporation, who gave us a very thorough outlook for Kuwait's plans, as they are now a significant producer of products at 1.4 million barrels a day. They start 2025 as with their new refinery in full production, the OiLSERV refinery at over 600,000 barrels a day. So a massive player in the international oil products markets. And now the announcement today that Kuwait Petroleum Corporation will open their own trading firm, KPC Trading, which will be based at DIFC, Dubai International Financial Center, in the same building alongside Aramco Trading and some of the other major trading firms. So some exciting developments for Kuwait, and perhaps one of our guests will give us further on that. But we are here with a very distinguished panel to start to look as we talk with His Excellency Sheikh Khaled about the outlook for Kuwait, as they just announced spending $30 billion budget before the end of the year. They announced that intention to get up to 3.5 million barrels a day of oil production. Of course, we know the UAE are striving and knocking on the door of 5 million barrels a day of oil production, even though their OPEC quota remains way below that. The question for our discussion today is the outlook for investment in Gulf upstream exploration and production in the age of energy security versus energy transition. These two things coexisting. It seems a lot of Europe and the Americas starting to abandon the idea of energy transition a little bit in favor of energy security. What's the challenge look like here? Let's kick off this morning with Sara Akbar, CEO of OiLSERV Kuwait, for her outlook, looking forward to the year ahead. Sara, the continued commitment of the Gulf producers to continue to expand production capacity. And as I mentioned, in Kuwait, $30 billion identified for spending in the energy infrastructure of Kuwait. What does that translate to in the field where you work and your company works regarding additional capacity growth this year?
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, everyone, and Happy New 25 for everyone.
Thank you.
We start the year on a very strong note about the expansion in the upstream and midstream and downstream businesses for all the Middle Eastern companies. And I'm not just saying the GCC, the Gulf. I am including Iraq, I am including Libya, I'm including Algeria. So all of these countries that have traditionally been oil-based energy kind of countries, you can see immediately in their plans a very strong growth potential and growth plans, and in every single one of them. And, so you want to understand what is the balance with energy transition. I think, and I've been always saying this part of the world sees itself as the energy security player, the main energy security player. And for us to create that stability and that balance in the market for the world, not just for the region, for the world, is a very, very important role and cornerstone for all. That's why we can see the growth in the demand. We can see that, many of the initiatives that were working hard on the transition, and you can see in the same time when we are focusing on investments in the upstream and developing oil and gas, in every single country, you see in parallel a very big plan in the transition for renewable, for carbon sequestering, for actually creating that element which will give sustainability to the oil and gas by actually capturing the carbon and making it more greener and more harmful to the environment. So the programs, both programs are heavy, and both programs are just going forward with the current environment, or even the past environment when we had the Democrats and we have all this animosity against oil and gas, did not affect much the plans of these countries to develop more oil and gas. And we can see it directly impacting our own business in the service sector. So there is more demand on the services. There is more rigs to be deployed. There is more, rigorous jobs that need to be done. There is more revival of fields that have not been touched before. There is more exploration work that is currently being executed all over. And all these countries, except for a few that actually, the main one, which we can see the stabilization of activity, no increase, was Saudi, because Saudi decided they will stay with the quota and they would stay with the kind of 12 billion.
Maybe to leave room for its neighbors, perhaps. Let's come back to that and welcome Khamis Mazrouei, Deputy CEO and Executive Director Operations at the Sharjah National Oil Corporation. And congratulations, Khamis, on your new appointment. We talked there at the beginning about massive companies like KPC, massive access to capital for these kinds of adventures and expansions. What's the outlook for smaller NOCs like SNOC to continue to invest in the upstream E&P, even while the commitment to the energy transition is still present?
Thank you, Sean, and Happy New Year and prosperous year for everyone. I'm glad to take part of this session.
Thank you.
SNOC, as a gas producer and national company in Sharjah, I would like to say we are like a prototype, maybe for the whole Gulf region, how they are embracing the current demands and energy security needs and a future energy transition. So at SNOC or at Sharjah, what we do, while we are having aggressive exploration program to secure Sharjah future needs, we are embracing the energy transition by decarbonizing our operation, and we are already committed to 2032 net zero target. In April, inshallah, we will commission or we start import power from the IBD plant that we jointly done it with Master Emerge. So while we are expanding our upstream business and exploration, we decarbonize our operation. This also frees some gas for the power sector. At the same time, we are doing, as Sara mentioned, there are some demand or regulatory activities. We are investing in our gas storage, because the gas storage, we see it will be required in the once your renewable energy mix increasing, you will need the gas storage to balance the demand between day and night. So for, let's say, a 1 giga renewable plant, when the sun rise in the morning, the gas demand by power plants will reduce by 150 million standard cubic feet of gas. And on the night, you need to produce that for power sector to deliver the base load. So we are investing in upstream. We decarbonize our operation. We invest on gas storage. We just completed our UBCTG program using reckless operation and to maximize our injection and production, so that we are ready for the future. And already we are seeing this in UAE, where when the sun rise, there is a shock in the gas demand drop by power plants, and when the sunset happen, the gas demand has increased. So you need gas storage. We are also doing our studies to prepare our mature fields.
Let's just come back to that in a minute, Khamis, if we will, because I'd like to bring in Dr. Carole Nakhle, CEO of Crystol Energy, and this year the president of the Arab Energy Club, a very distinguished position in the industry. And Mabruk, congratulations, Carole, on that acknowledgement and that role. I wanted to get your thoughts, Carole, on this, as Sara mentioned, and Khamis obviously articulated further. It seems that across the Middle East and certainly across the Gulf, it's maximum energy everywhere, and whether it be oil, whether it be gas, whether it be renewables, in Abu Dhabi, nuclear. And yet, at the point that Sara mentioned, Saudi Arabia pulled back from expanding their oil capacity. Is Saudi Arabia more correct than the others? I mean, can we continue to have maximum of all of these energy supplies in a world? So UAE's carrying about 1.5 million barrels of idle capacity. We've got China slowdown. Maximum energy everywhere in the Gulf. Does that make sense? Has Saudi got it right? The others maybe should pay attention.
Good morning, Sean, and thank you very much for your kind words. It's an honor for me to preside over the Arab Energy Club, and I hope we'll have more discussions in collaboration with you in the coming few years. It depends. The answer to your question depends on the time frame you are considering. So let me here take a longer term perspective, because we're talking about the energy transition, which is a very long term process. And for those who believe that the energy transition would end up with sole reliance on green energy, and therefore we're going to secure energy security, accordingly, I'll tell them to think again, because we do have much greater concentration of resources, production, and processing of metals and minerals, which are most needed for the energy transition. We have much bigger concentration of those resources and processes in a smaller number of countries than we do have with oil and gas. And I really would like people to have a look at those numbers. And therefore, if going down that route solely, for me, is unrealistic. So for me, the energy transition is about rebalancing our primary energy mix, our electricity mix, and it relies in diversity and diversity alone. It does not mean that oil and gas markets are going to continue growing forever. They are changing, and challenges are already ahead, and some of the producers in the region are feeling the pressure. Now, in the longer term, even in the market that is shrinking, the region is pretty unique. It has massive reserves, proven reserves of both oil and gas, and they do have very low cost of production that puts them at an advantage over other countries. However, when you look at the carbon intensity of production, you do have a very divergent picture across the countries in the region. So, for example, the GCC, and this is where I think we can have a more comprehensive or complementing story to what Sara and Khamis said, why certain countries like the GCC in particular are investing more into carbon capture and storage and decarbonizing their oil and gas activities, because the countries that have the biggest reserves, the lowest cost of production, and the lowest carbon intensity are the ones to stay in the market for the longest. So this is where I'm not worried about Saudi Arabia, I'm not worried about Kuwait, I'm not worried about the UAE. I am really worried about countries such as Algeria and Iraq because of gas flaring and carbon intensity. So to go back to your question about the position of Saudi Arabia, I think, and I cannot speak on behalf of the Saudis, but I think they are taking a longer term perspective. They know that their position is protected, so is the position of their neighbors. But mind you, their production is more than double what we see in the neighboring countries. So this can also explain their strategic choices. And at the same time, they would like to see a floor set for prices because of challenging market conditions today, but those market conditions might well change in the coming future. So it depends on the time frame that we are thinking about, but in the longer term, I think this region is set up to be a winner even in the energy transition if they know how to capitalize on their existing resources.
Well, maybe when we come back, we can talk specifically about the year ahead as we bring this a little bit into focus for this discussion in the sense of outlook. Sara, on that point, I wanted to get your views on what the announcement in Kuwait at the end of last year, $30 billion, will actually mean on the ground in the next 12 months in the actual activities for your companies and others, and the sort of by the end of the year, what's Kuwait's production capacities and impact might look like?
Okay, so the Kuwait is investing in two things at the same time. The first one is maintaining production. As you know, we have 5 big major fields that are mature and in decline. And in order to maintain the capacity from these fields, which is about 2.5 million barrels, you really need to invest in order to maintain that capacity. On top of that, there is additional capacity to be added, and these come from the newly discovered fields. Some fields, I think maybe you saw that now they are producing about 90,000 barrels of heavy oil. This comes from two fields that have been developed, the Radka field and the Omniga field. But there is more than that that needs to be developed. So there is Motreba development, there is West Kuwait development, there are new fields in the north and offshore. Last year, they announced the discovery of one big field in the offshore, and that needs capital in order to be developed and produced. And in the same time, they are investing in exploration, offshore exploration. I think there are like 4 or 5 rigs currently on contract to drill additional exploration areas. And, you know, in the offshore, up to very recently, we drilled only to something like 8,000 feet. Now they are going deeper, and we are finding these fantastic reservoirs that have very light oil or condensate and gas. So a lot of effort and funding is directed toward that new exploration development of the offshore, in addition to the fields that been discovered over the last 10 years that has not been developed.
But just to follow up on the point I made to Carole, is all of that spending now make sense when OPEC Plus is carrying 6 million barrels of idle capacity and struggling to bring any of it back given the weak outlook for demand?
Sean, we were criticized heavily in the past for building the Zohr refinery and building the Duqm refinery. As you know, the only refining addition in this part of the world was through those 2 refineries. And you just said it before when we started, that this is, look what position we have now in the market by being able to have all those products that we can market, and the world genuinely needs those products. So for companies like for NOCs, they actually invest off the cycle. They don't, you know, the cycle of investment does not get impacted by the cyclical nature. They get a plan, they just go about doing it. And, you know, it's proved right over and over and over. So what is the best investment we can do as Kuwait? You know, okay, so we have, as you know, Kuwait has 2 sources of revenue or 2 sources of investment. It is the oil and gas, and we have our sovereign wealth fund. We are investing in both. But if you compare, if Kuwait was a company, then where would be the best dollar that you can invest in order to make the best return? It is its own oil and gas. And that's exactly what we're doing. So from a common economic sense, it makes huge sense for Kuwait. And, you know, it's a cyclical nature of the industry. Today, you have all these forecasts and, you know, you don't know. Today, we should not be at $76 or $77 if you think about it, but we are. So,
Khamis, just to pick up on that, I mean, the outlook for Sharjah and other smaller production companies, can you continue to work both sides of this equation, energy security that Sharjah desperately needs, new gas supply and so forth, and energy transition, investing in other aspects, whether it be reservoir storage and so forth, given the limited resources like BP, even one of the biggest energy companies in the world, Shell, they've backed away from their energy transition commitments. Should you, given your limited resources, not consider doing that and just focus on energy security?
We are, as a company, we make our decision based on a commercial basis. So we see the energy transition as opportunity, and it's commercial and economical. If we decarbonize our operation, we will free gas to be sold to the power company, yes, and generate more power. So we see they go hand in hand. So decarbonizing our operation, reducing the carbon intensity, at the same time secure the needs for the power plants. From 2022 till 24, there are about 3 big power plants which will be run for next 25 years, has been commissioned in UAE. In Sharjah, already we revamped Siwa revamped their plants to a 2.8 giga new closed cycle plants. There is F3 in Fujairah, and there is Al Hasyan in Dubai, 2.4 giga again, converted from a clean coal to a gas. So there is we see a gas demand in UAE for the next 25 years. All these are IPP independent power producers. So as producer, as energy suppliers, we need to supply them with the gas. At the same time, we see UAE committed to a diversified energy mix and renewable energy and net zero by 2050. So there is opportunity there. So we are capturing that opportunity as well. So we do it all. We see it is the future. We see it is commercial and economical, and we make our decision on that basis.
Carole, just to weigh in on that, of the more immediate sense of outlook here, the year ahead, we've started the year with the UAE having to give up on its aspirations to increase its OPEC quota, given the commitment by the organization to stay with the current cuts regime. What's your outlook for those that sort of shut in supply, never mind investing in new supply, but the outlook for OPEC Plus to bring back this idle supply, never mind, as I say, bringing it on board and investing billions in new?
Yeah, you use the expression of giving up. I think they did not give up. I think they just delayed it a little bit longer. So that's a key difference, because if I look at what OPEC Plus has been doing, and this is quite part of their strategy, is they wait for market signals, and based on that, they revisit whatever decisions they took previously, and they can adapt that decision to changes in market conditions, which is fair enough. Now, when I look at this year, if I look at all the data coming in, all the various forecasts with a big pinch of salt, actually, you have to be careful. If I look at market fundamentals only, I see it's going to be a challenging year for OPEC Plus if the target is to see higher prices while releasing more barrels in the market, because everybody's expecting maybe a tight market in the first quarter of the year, but there is consensus of a surplus this year that is likely to increase as we go through the second quarter onwards. That is based on market fundamentals not changing drastically. So if in China we don't see a massive support from the government, more support than what we have seen, and to see the economy growing faster, and on the supply side, the data is out there and tells us there's still strong supply coming from outside OPEC Plus. So if I take those into consideration, it will be a challenging year for OPEC Plus to put more barrels in the market. That said, we're forgetting that geopolitics can make a big difference in the outlook for the year. We have a new president coming to the White House shortly, and that president has some drastic policies, ambitions. He may pursue them, he may not pursue them, we're going to see, but that is creating big uncertainty. It can have major ramifications on global oil markets. So that for me is a big unknown card. And also don't forget, there are still geopolitical tensions ongoing, including here in the Middle East. We don't have peace, established peace. We still have problems ongoing, and they can derail oil markets for this year.
Let's bring up the survey question before we put the panel on the spot to give us their oil price forecasts for the year ahead, and some of these bigger issues that Carole has started to address in her last comment. What is the greatest challenge Gulf states face regarding future capital expenditure on new oil capacity? 1, balancing long-term returns with the risk of peak oil demand by 2030, which is what the IEA has declared, which is the representative research agency for the OECD countries, the biggest economies in the world. They're saying peak oil demand 2030. 2, securing financing amid global pressure to shift towards cleaner energy transition. The IFC, the private sector arm of the World Bank, now won't lend $1, not even $1, that is not aligned with the Paris climate goals. major multilateral lending agency. 3, navigating geopolitical risks and market volatility impacting investment stability. Some of the points Carole just mentioned there are still wars going on in Europe and the Middle East. So what is the greatest challenge Gulf states face regarding future capital expenditure on new oil capacity? Of course, there are many others than this list, but amongst this 3, which one do you think is the greatest challenge in the immediate future? That is the question there. I'm just thinking about how I'm voting. Sorry, Sara. Again, I wanted to get everybody's view. We have 5 minutes left before the next panel waiting off stage is going to come on. Your thoughts on where you think Brent crude oil prices will be this year and how that intersects with OPEC policy and the return of Trump. If you put all of those 3 in one Venn diagram, what's the number in the middle?
I think we will be hovering around the $70 because, I mean, all of these factors, just avoiding, if we don't have geopolitical events that can push it this way or that way, then I think with this 25 will be very similar to what happened in 24. 24, if you remember, we had wars, we had everything that we have today. We had it last year, except the biggest change today is the administration in the US and this expansionist mentality and, you know, all the uncertainties that come with this new administration. I think that will be the biggest shift and change that will impact where do we sit on oil and gas. And, you know, everything that was said by the administration before they take office regarding the energy to Europe, drill, lots of talk about the view from this administration and what do they plan to do. Now, if they implement everything they said before they are in the office, then we should see a much lower price, because if the US decides that they won't go and flood the market left, right, and center, then you end up in that, again, OPEC cannot sustain that kind of war.
Well, we saw that back 10 years ago when the shale production went go, the oil price ended up collapsing. Khamis, before we run out of time, your thoughts on the same question, your average oil price for Brent crude this year and the intersection with some of these other bigger issues?
Yeah, I think there will be a pressure downwards, but not very extreme pressure to push it very low. So I would agree with Sara, it would be in the 70 range. A tweet from Trump can change everything. But at the same time, something to remember during the COVID time, Trump or US and Canada were part of the deal of OPEC++ to revive the oil price to the stages we are in here. So I don't expect there is a big pressure that will bring it.
It's hard to imagine ExxonMobil taking decisions that are going to negatively impact their bottom line just to please the president. One would think that would be contrary to their legal obligation to shareholders. But Dr. Carole, the last word to you on this question, your thoughts on what the average Brent crude oil price might be in the year ahead. And I'd like you to also intersect that with the sustainability of OPEC+. It's faced some challenges over the last year. What's your outlook for the sustainability of that 22-member group through this year and the intersection of the average oil price, Brent?
Okay, I'll start with the easier one, that is the sustainability of OPEC+. There will always be internal discontent, but I don't see the group as a whole, even though maybe some members may decide to change course, but the whole group is going to be with us for some time. In terms of oil price, whatever I tell you will be proven wrong, but let me go with the majority here on this panel and say we'd see it going in like the 70s range, closer to the 70s than it is on the upward range. But again, really, there are so many, while we have a better understanding of oil markets, so many determinants, particularly on the demand side, on the economic outlook side, that are very difficult to predict. And on that word of wisdom, I say thank you very much for having me with you.
Thank you so much. And again, congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
Really great to see you recognized for all your many years of amazing work. So we wrap it up there. Navigating geopolitical risk is the biggest sort of vote in this room. We now move to the actual geopolitical session where we have three big geopolitical analysts waiting to tell us all of the juicy stuff they'd like to share about their vision for the year ahead. So Sara, Akbar in Kuwait, thank you so much. Carole Nakhle, who seems to be on an airplane rather than living anywhere in particular, and Khamis Mazrouei in Sharjah, thank you so much. And again, Mabruk on your new appointment. Take care, and we'll move to the next session. Shukran.